One secret to get hired this week is to master 20 Scrum Master interview questions you will likely be asked if you hop on an interview. So for those who have been scheduled for an interview this week, it's time for you to level up. I'm going to be looking at 20 most asked questions about Scrum Master interviews, and we are going to take it from there. So it's a Monday. Super excited to be here. It's Level Up Monday. And one of the great news is that today we are going to be having our safe Scrum Master certification. If you want to hop on that, good. You're welcome to join us today. It's going to start from 5 p.m. Central Time through 9 p.m. And we do that for 4 days. By the end of the week, you are going to be Safe Scrum Master certified. So you want to hop in there. And for those who want to level up, join our community of practice, right? You can always reach out for more information if you want to get out there. Check the description. You have so many we have so many resources there. But without wasting much time, it's a Monday, and no, we want to get it straight to the point and we want to get going, right? So what are top 20 questions you likely get this week if you're hopping on an interview or subsequently? And I want you to pay very, very close attention to this question. And one of the good stuff is that I came today with my cheat sheet. So I'm going to be reading them out and we are going to be discussing about them. So the first question is, why do Scrum? Right. I know this question a lot of people don't expect a lot. Why do we need to do Scrum? Why should we invest in Scrum? Right. This is a very important question because it helps you to understand why you should even be a Scrum Master. So we need to do Scrum. Scrum increase the return on your investment and improve continual process. How can you back that up? How can you back that up that Scrum is going to help us to be able to increase our return on investment? It's very, very, very simple. Now, the way Scrum is organized, it's organized for us to constantly evaluate, and Scrum focus on business value, right? Which means that if we're paying attention on business value and if we're taking out anything that can limit us from achieving our business value, then it's high chances that we are going to succeed. So it helps us to increase our return on investment. So if we want higher return on investment, then we should be talking about Scrum, right? Now, question number 2, what are user stories as related to Scrum? So in a simple way, when it comes to Scrum, a user story is a single sentence defining a functionality or a feature. So a user story is a single sentence defining a functionality or a feature. It is called user story because it is written in the user language. So, and user story has 3 components. The first one is who is the person we're talking who, and the next one is the activity, which is what they're doing, and the third is the business value, which is the why, right? So 3 major components. Your user story is a sentence, but if you talk about who are we talking about, and we talk about what are they talking about, and then why is it important, which is the business value. And the third question for today says that define sprint. What is sprint as in relation to as related to Scrum? A sprint is a regular or repeatable work cycle during which a team can accomplish work and keep it prepared for review. Okay, so a sprint, it's a repeated work cycle. So we yet talk about sprint, or we talk about either sprint or iteration. We're talking about a repeated cycle during which a team can define and complete a piece of work. So it's very important for you to understand when we talk about, we're in sprint 1. Sprint simply means it's a defined cycle, and it occurs in a cycle, which is also called a cadence. And a team within that period, we can do what? We can plan work that need to be done and need to be accomplished so that we can showcase it to our stakeholder. Question number 4, what are product backlog in Scrum? What do you mean by product backlog? Oh, I'm looking at my product backlog and I see this. What is a product backlog? Right. Prior to initiating a sprint, or prior to initiating a sprint, the product owner review a list of future bugs, changes, and every stuff. So A product backlog, in a very simple terms, contain all the to-do lists that we need to complete in order to make sure that that product is ready. Now, I'm going to give an example. Let's say that we want to build a website for the University of Arlington, right? That's given to an IT team, right? So the product backlog will contain every list of items that need to be on that website. And now we understand that building a website for a big university is not something that can be done by one developer. So it's going to involve a lot of customization because we need to host courses. We need to host so many stuff there. So the product backlog is going to contain everything that needs to be done for the work to be completed. We call it a product backlog. And out of the product backlog, we can now start doing what? Having sprint backlog. So a sprint backlog is a subset of a product backlog. Question number 5 says that what is a Scrum Master? What is the Scrum Master role in Scrum? Right. The key role of a Scrum Master, I know we are used to saying the Scrum Master should remove impediment and facilitate event. But if you ask, what's your role as a Scrum Master? Your role as a Scrum Master is to help the product team or a development team deliver continuous value, continuous business value, which is called an increment every sprint. All right. By helping them deliver continuous business value in increment, what you're doing is that you are facilitating this event and removing impediments so that the team can continuously deliver value and increment every sprint. So I did not say that the role of a Scrum Master is to facilitate event and remove impediments in the team. That is only obvious if we have a business value that we want to deliver. This business value are delivered in increment. So you stand a better chance of painting your role as a Scrum Master as someone that is helping a team to deliver a business value incrementally throughout the sprint that has been planned. Question number 6, list Scrum disadvantages. All right, what are some of the different? Why should we not use Scrum? Now, Scrum may have hard time planning, organizing, structuring projects that don't have clear goals, right? So, because in Scrum, we want to be able to understand the product roadmap, have a release plan and all of that. What if we don't have all of that in hand? It becomes very difficult for us to achieve our goal using Scrum. Now, the disadvantage also of Scrum is that sometimes when the environment where we are working in is not agile, although I'm using a term to define a term here, but what I want to explain here is that the disadvantage is that if the leaders are not trained in their mindset to support the team, Scrum doesn't really work, right? It's not something, it needs to be in a very organized environment, right? But the major disadvantage of Scrum is that if we're not so clear about what we need to build, we cannot effectively plan our sprint, so many uncertainty, interruption, and it might not really help us. So in that way, we might want to use a different approach to complete our project. Question number 7, explain what do we mean by an increment? Oh, I'm helping my team deliver an increment by the end of this sprint. What exactly is an increment? Increment refers to number of product backlog items that are completed in the course of a sprint, as well as during a previous sprint. Now, when we talk about an increment is a part of a future or a future that we can be able to demo. It's not called an increment because it's a story that is completed. It's called an increment because we can independently demo. An increment can be demo. Now, the reason we always talk about sprint review is because a team can work on things that are, but they have not completed the increment. I want to give you an example. Let's say that we are building, a payment gateway for students to be able to pay their tuition and all of that. And this normally needs to take about a month to complete, right? In the first 2 weeks, we are doing work in that portal, but it's not yet completed. We cannot call that an increment. So after 2 weeks, what we do a review of what we have been doing. After 1 month, when we have completed, now we demo the increment. Now it's just a gateway, it's payment gateway. The reason it's called an increment because it's an integral part of the whole system. All right, perfect. Number 8. Number 8 says that what are impediments? Impediments simply means anything that can limit a team from going ahead. And it can be simple and complex. For instance, you have a scrum master and that scrum master is not participating in your events, or they're taking regular absence. That's an impediment. Why is it an impediment? Because if others want to get update about the work that the scrum master is doing, they will not be able to get this update, right? And it stop others because they're waiting for that person to come and give update. Impediments can be most often you have one of your team member, maybe their laptop is not connecting to the central system of the if they're working virtually, their laptop is not connecting to the central system of the organization. So because of that, they can effectively do their work. So you need to be able to reach out to the IT department to help them solve that. That's an impediment. An impediment could still also be that you need to be able to reach out to other teams. You need to be able to reach out to an external team if you need to deploy any work or automate any stuff that is engaged in DevOps or any stuff. That means you don't have the particular expertise within your team, which means that your team is not cross-functional. That can also be an impediment. Number 9, does a burn down, what does a burn down, the burn down chart shows? Okay, what is a burn down chart? The burn down chart simply show us how we are the pace at which we are completing the product backlog item, or the pace at which we are completing stories in our product backlog, right? So it's called a burn down chart because it's showing us we plan our work and that work is being completed. It's more like you have a candle, right? And you burn in that candle. When that candle is going down, you can be able to see until if you burn out, or means it's been completed. The same way, when we start work, we call it a burn down chart because we can see how it is decreasing. We can see the level at which we are completing the product backlog item. Okay. Number 10 says that what is the difference between a sprint and iteration, and what's a sprint story point? How do sprint and iteration differ? Now, sprint is mostly used in a Scrum environment. Iteration is mostly used in a safe environment. So there's no major difference between iteration and sprint, right? It's just based on the environment. Now, when we say, when we talk about a story point in a sprint, or story points in a sprint, this simply means that these are stories that are under the sprint, right? So the key question here is, what's the difference between a sprint and an iteration? There's no difference between sprint and an iteration because all of them are repeated circles. All of them are cadence, right? Then sprint is mostly used in a Scrum environment, while iteration is used in a safe environment. But everything that is done in a sprint is the same as what is done in an iteration. All right. So question 11. What is velocity as related to Scrum, and how do you measure it? Now, velocity is the amount of work a team is capable of committing to. Average velocity is the amount of work a team normally complete. So if I'm in a team and I want to showcase my average velocity, is history of this is how much I've been able to complete from one sprint to another, that's average velocity. But when you talk about velocity, it's how much can we take, which that is depicted from our average velocity, right? So velocity is how much a team is capable of completing to. And this is different from load. When we talk about load, for instance, I have a I have 5 developers, and let's say our average velocity is about 38. Now that's what we're capable of completing to. Let's say we have a lot of disturbance during the sprint, and we plan out 30% of our time on as unforeseen, which means that we don't want to commit to 38 story point. We want to commit to less because there might be some issues coming up later. Now, what we actually commit to, which is lesser, is our load, but our velocity still remain 38. Okay, very important you note that, and you measure that by how much work your team is capable of taking. How long are Scrum cycle? How long are Scrum cycle? Now we know that it is recommended by the Scrum guide that a Scrum cycle should not be longer than 4 weeks, right? Most often we have seen 2 week sprint cycle. Scrum cycle is the same as Scrum cycle is the same as the sprint cycle. Most often we have seen the 2 week sprint cycles, and really you sometimes you see 1 week, 3 weeks. Maximum you're gonna see is going to be a 1 month or 4 weeks sprint cycle. Note that. Question number 13. Mention the Scrum artifact. So artifact is a very simple question, right? But you need to know what you're talking about. Burndown chart is an artifact, velocity chart is an artifact, product backlog is an artifact, and sprint backlog is an artifact, any increment is an artifact. Now, if you want to put this question in a very common way that you can understand, an artifact simply means that something, if I see it, I can be able to tell what we're working on. I can be able to tell what environment we are in, right? So it's more like an output, which I can see and I say, oh, if I see, let's say, a velocity chart, I can be able to understand what the team is doing or understand the team performance. If I see a bend down chart, I can be able to see how the team is doing. Those are output. When I see a sprint backlog, I can be able to see what we're working on during the sprint. When I see a product backlog, I can be able to see what we're working on as a team. So those are output. Number 14, question number 14. Ideally, how long should a sprint last? How long should a sprint last? Typically, we recommend 2 weeks because that's an average period that has been proven to be effective for a team to plan, do the work, review, and retrospect, right? But it might go up to 4 months depending on what the team is building, but we recommend 2 weeks. Question number 15, what happened during Scrum meetings? All right, during Scrum meetings, the team analyzed how much time they had to finish the task while navigating the sprint process. Or when we talk about Scrum meetings, it's kind of mostly referred to the daily Scrum, right? What happened during the daily Scrum? What happened during the daily Scrum? Or if the question just come up, what happened during Scrum meetings? Now you can give an overview of what happened during the sprint planning, what happened during the daily stand-up, what happened during the sprint review, backlog refinement, and retrospective, which if I want to capture this in a very brief way, I can say, okay, when we talk about Scrum meetings, we should be talking about the sprint planning, the daily stand-up, the backlog refinement, the review, and the retrospective. The sprint planning is where we're able to plan and commit to the set of work, a set of stories that we want to complete within the sprint cycle, which is typically 2 weeks. And if you, in an interview, you want to refer to your environment. Now, daily stand-up is an event where we come together as a team and we inspect the work that we are doing and see how we can be able to collaborate and help each other by creating transparency, seeing what each person has been working on the previous day and what they're working on the same day, and if they have impediments. So it's more like a cross-validation meeting. That's why most often they ask the question, how do you ensure that your daily Scrum are not update or start to update? No, not start to update. It's really an event for us to learn and improve. Now we go on a backlog refinement. Why do I talk about backlog refinement before I go to talk about review and retrospective? It is a good practice that backlog refinement are done in the middle of the sprint because they are preparing you for the next sprint. And it's good that you do it you give about, let's say, about a week to do it, so that if there are any limitations that you need to fix, you can fix them before the next sprint, right? So backlog refinement is just us going through our backlog and make sure that it's prioritized, make sure that we have enough work for the next sprint. And it's always good to plan 2 sprints deeper. So backlog refinement help us to gain that visibility into the next sprint, right? Now, another aspect of backlog, especially if you're a Scrum Master working with multiple teams, you really need to take your backlog seriously, because if you do plan your backlog refinement effectively, it limits the time you're going to spend on your next sprint planning, right? Now, with reviews happen the last day of the sprint when we have closed our sprint, and then we go through the our sprint result, we review it with our stakeholders, and if we have increment, we demo increment. So review and demo they're not 2 different events, they're 1 event, right? Review simply means that if we don't have an increment, what we demo are increment because we finish and we can show how it's working. But we're still working on it, and it's not at the point where we can demo, we simply review it, right? And retrospective is an event for the team where the team learn from what they've been doing during the sprint, and then they can do what? They can be able to look at how they can improve. So retrospective are event for relentless improvement. And our next question is question 16. What is on a burn down chart? Wow, this is a more deeper question, right? We always talk about, oh, burn down chart show story. What is on it? What is on it? This one go a bit more deeper. I want you to talk about, okay, on the x-axis display the work day, and on the y-axis displays the remaining effort. So we have the burn down chart has the x and the y-axis. So the x-axis display working days, and the y-axis display the remaining effort. Now, what is working day? On a burn down chart, when we are completing the story, you can be able to see at what particular day that story was completed, right? And then we can see what is left undone in our y-axis. Okay, so the chart showcase ID effort as a guideline, as well as real progress in the effort being made. So it's like a rate time. You can see, if you go there, you can see rate time, what really happened. If a story is added, you can see it. If a story is completed, you can see it. Number 17, what's Scrum of Scrum? Scrum of Scrum. What is Scrum of Scrum? The term refers to the meeting that happened after the daily stand-up. No. So the Scrum of Scrum meeting is mostly, Scrum of Scrum is a typical meeting in a safe environment. Why? Because it's a meeting for all the Scrum Master. When you hear about Scrum of Scrum, it means there are multiple Scrum teams in that company. That's why all the Scrum Master need to come together to be able to look at how they can inspect their progress towards a particular objective. In a Scrum environment, they inspect their progress towards the PI objective. And this is also an event where all different Scrum Masters can look at how they can facilitate or coordinate dependency and learn from each other. Typically, a Scrum of Scrum should be about 30 minutes, and we can have a meet after. So it's more like a scene meeting for Scrum Master. In a safe environment, it's facilitated by the release train engineer. Now, if you're in a Scrum environment where the Scrum of Scrum definitely it's more of a learning process and sharing idea, you should call that maybe your Agile Center of Learning, or you should give it like a different name, right? It would not really be a Scrum of Scrum. A Scrum of Scrum is purely for Scrum Master. But in most of the cases, when it starts including beyond Scrum Master and almost everyone in the organization, that is not Scrum of Scrum, right? So you should be able to advise your company when they talk about Scrum of Scrum, and then there's everyone within there, the managers, and it's more of a community of practice or a learning environment. So number 18 says define velocity. Velocity refers to the effort, the team can make in a sprint? We already spoke about velocity. Anyway, let me reconsider question 18 and talk about capacity. What is a team capacity and what is the difference between capacity and velocity? Now, capacity talk about the manpower, right? Talk about the available resources in terms of manpower. If we say we have a capacity of 5 developers, 2 back end, 2 front end, and a QA, that's our capacity. Now, if we are giving work that need the effort of 2 QA, then we don't have the capacity to complete that. Are you understanding when we talk about capacity? So you can have, let's say, you have a capacity of 5, but you have a velocity, the amount of work you want to complete, and that velocity might be as low as 20, which means that the capacity you have is more than the velocity. But if the capacity you have doesn't matches the workload, for instance, you have 20 story points, and out of those 20 story points, 10 of them are supposed to be QA, and you have just 1 QA, and that QA is working just 50%. It means they cannot even take up to 5 story points. What do you need to do? You need to be able, that's an impediment. You need to be able to communicate. So that's the difference between capacity and velocity. Velocity simply means work that we can take, but capacity goes to not just work we can take, but also check about the different skill set within a team. All right. Number 19, define poker planning. And what do we understand by poker planning? So poker planning leverages what we call the Fibonacci sequence. And poker planning helps us to be able to have a conversation about a story or a story point or a piece of work that needs to be completed. A piece of work that needs to be completed in a Scrum environment is labeled as a story point. So when we talk about capacity or when we talk about poker planning uses a deck of cards. A deck of cards is called the adjusted Fibonacci sequence, which has a number 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 40, 100, infinity, right? And when we have a piece of work that needs to be done, now team members can be able to estimate the work. Team member can be able to estimate the work based on what they think. So, and we do it by team member picking each of these number. If we pull up a piece of work and I think it's going to be an effort of 3, I pull out my card effort of 3. And then let's say Linda pull out a card effort of 5. And let's say Mark pull out a card effort of 8. Now we have different ideas, right? Which is a good point. And we start discussing why we think we have different opinion. And that gives us more clarity and we agreed on the same point. So a lot of people always feel like the reason we have Fibonacci sequence is when everyone will come up with an average. No, the goal is not to come up with an average. The goal is to be able to have conversation, do clarification, and come up with an answer. Now, the last question, which is question 20, which is going to make you more smarter this week, is what's the goal of retrospective meeting related to a sprint? Now, retrospective is the period for a team to learn and relentlessly improve. For us to be able to evaluate every opportunity we had within the sprint, what helped us move ahead, what are we doing that is making us stand out, and what can we do that can help us move ahead. So we don't only put action item on what to learn, we also look at what we can preserve as a team. So retrospective meetings are very important event that help us to learn from our mistake, that help us to learn from our success story, that give the team an opportunity to appreciate themselves and to continuously grow. Wow. That was 20 questions for you to smash the week. And if you want more of these, right, it's just me answering it. If you want to translate this into practice and look at how you can be able to start not just hearing this, but doing this, join our community of practice. Check out the link. You should be able to, on the description link, check out the link. You should be able to get more information on how to be part of this great community, wonderful people, getting excellent results, not only learning Scrum, but learning how to be better leader. There's definitely no value or no price that will be equivalent to what you will get in my community. So basically telling you that upfront. That's why we don't look at the money value, right? We just want to make sure that we're helping as many people as much as possible. And then for those who are already working and you need some assistance, we also have a community of practice you can plug in there. None of my community is free, but none of them it's like super expensive. You just pay a fee that help you to understand the value of what you're learning. You're in there. There's so much help and there's so much support for you. Okay, do have a great week, great week, great week. Our next video is going to come up on Friday, but we always have an opportunity to learn. Now, on Wednesday, probably Wednesday morning, I'm going to be doing a live session within my Facebook community group, and I want everyone to be that group. A lot of people have been asking for a space where they can be able to ask questions without sending them to my inbox and waiting for an answer for long. So I've created a Facebook community group where we can do more interaction in there. We can be able to support you much better. Okay, do have a great week, and I see you in the next video. Let's keep winning as a team.